This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Atom Audio, Isotope, Native Instruments, Empirical Labs, Sound Porter Mastering, and Trace Audio. You're hearing my voice right now through custom Trace Audio cables and the new Empirical Labs pump compressor mixed through Isotope RX, Ozone, Neutron, Nectar, and Plasma, all mixed on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. It's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
I would also tell myself not to fall into the trap of unhealthy comparisons with other people, because everybody is in their own path. This person has these huge numbers and he's doing this and this and this and this. You try to bring that into your own path and suddenly you might lose the way, and what works for someone else doesn't necessarily work for you.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. At Isotope, saturation just got a whole lot smarter. Introducing the new Isotope Plasma plugin to supercharge your sound by giving your tracks exactly what they need, precisely when and where they need it. Unlike traditional saturators that apply a static effect, Plasma's groundbreaking flux saturation technology analyzes your sound and applies dynamic processing, adding targeted warmth, depth, and character to bring out the best in your mixes and masters. Use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off the new Plasma or any of the awesome plugins at isotope.com. Atom Audio proudly announces the D3V active desktop monitors and H200 dynamic closed-back studio headphones, designed in Berlin for pro-level monitoring in home studios. The D3V features 3.5-inch woofers with ribbon tweeters for studio-quality sound in a compact design ideal for songwriters and producers. The D3V includes USB-C and balanced analog inputs, a headphone output, and DSP room acoustics. The H200 closed-back headphones feature powerful 32-ohm drivers and comfortable ear pads in a durable metal construction, making them perfect for studio or portable use. The included plugin enhances tonal control and stereo spatialization, so you never have to leave the sweet spot at atomaudio.com. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Jose Castillo, a producer, songwriter for artists seeking to bridge the gap between Latin and English-speaking world and the pop and alternative worlds. Jose's discography has a great dance floor feel with a mastery of EDM style, and of course I've got a link to that in the show notes, so please check it out. His recent work includes Grammy and Latin-Grammy nominated releases by Camila Cabello and Bomba Estereo, Bad Bunny, Manu Chao, Fonseca, and many other artists. His unique background combines a Caribbean and Latin sensibility with a classical training in composition, and a special point of view that comes from having toured around the world's best festivals with Bomba Estereo. Thank you so much to Damian Taylor for making our original introduction. Damian, you rock. Please welcome Jose Castillo to Recording Studio Rockstars. Jose, are you ready to rock, brother?
Always ready to rock, man. Excited to be here.
Dude, it's great to have you here on the podcast, man. Where are you joining us from right now?
I'm right now in Bogota, Colombia.
Bogota, Colombia. Wow. I have never been there.
You definitely have to come, man.
What is it like there? I mean, if you were describing, when you meet somebody around the world and they're like, "What's it like in Bogota?" What do you say?
Okay, I have to give you the long answer because it's the real answer. So I'm in Colombia right now. I'm in the capital of Colombia. I'm in the middle of the country, and here it's basically a beautiful mountain. It's cold weather, and it's the total opposite from where I'm from, which is in the northern part of the country. It's called Barranquilla, and it's the Caribbean. It's the sea, the river, like the warmth, So Colombia has this really special quality, and is that it's really diverse, and each part of the country is unique.
Yeah, I can see it. So you're in South America, near Ecuador, Venezuela, on the west
right
side.
in the middle of Ecuador and Venezuela.
Yeah, cool, beautiful. And so when you tour as an artist, you've had a lot of opportunities to go all over the place. Do you come up to, do you tour like all around the world? Do you tour all around South America and Central America?
Yes, I feel blessed because it was one of my dreams when coming up as a musician, to someday tour the world, to someday travel just to play music. And I've been really happy to be able to do it for some years now, almost 7 years. I've been touring all over, and we've really played like my dream festivals. Like we have played Rock in Rio in Brazil. We've played Lollapalooza in Chicago. We've toured all over Europe. So it's been a dream, really.
And your English is fantastic. So is that something that you just grew up learning multiple languages, or Spanish and English?
No, really. I studied in a bilingual school, and that's the reason why I kind of speak well English, but it does get rusty from time to time,
Do you speak any other languages?
No, not really. The Spanish and English.
But I'm sure that helps with touring and being able to go so many different places.
Yes, no, definitely. Like being able to communicate with people all over is quite special, because it's part of the experience, like really getting to know other cultures and being able to communicate with them. Yeah, I really hope to be able to learn new languages someday. There's just no time for everything you want to do in life, but I really love, Italian, Japanese someday,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing the podcast with us here. You'll get a 2-hour practice in English.
Okay, that's great. I need it.
It'll be great by the time this is over, right?
Okay, that's great.
What do you think about the connection between learning other languages and learning music, and the way that those things go together? Do you feel like there is a similarity in the ability for us to hear how a language sounds musically and hear how a guitar part would go musically?
I think it's a really deep question, but I do feel I have the certainty that music is a language. It's actually a language, and you can communicate with other people through music. The thing is that sometimes when we think of a language, we are like hardwired to relate language with words. And language is not only words. Like language sometimes, or communication sometimes runs way deeper, and it can be like a gesture. It can be like a feeling. It can be like something really subtle that communicates a whole lot. But I have the certainty that music is a really, really universal language, and that goes way beyond what words can describe.
Yeah. Do you feel in your travels that we all share fundamental, like a fundamental common language, as far as we may use different words, we may use different expressions, we might even use different musical phrases, but that really at the core, we're all similar people?
Yes, for sure. For example, one of my really early experiences when I started to play with Bomba Estereo, one of our first concerts was in Norway, in Tromsø, Norway, which is really far away from where I am right now. It's right by the Arctic Circle, almost there in the Arctic. And when I went, I was really excited because I could tell it was a totally different culture. Like you could go take a trip to see like orcas, to see whales, or ride on sleighs with dogs. That's something that you never see
Wow.
around these parts. So I went with a great excitement to see what was gonna happen in that festival. So we go to the festival and we start playing. And first of all, everybody in the audience was blonde. That's a huge contrast also to what we see normally here, because there's also blonde people here in Colombia, but there's like a whole diversity
Yeah.
of colors, of everything. And I see the people in the audience going crazy with the music we are playing. And maybe they understood it. We're playing like a mixture of cumbia with electronic music, with a lot of folk elements from Colombia. And you see the people dancing in Norway. They maybe think it's like salsa, like maybe they don't quite understand how specific it is what we're playing, but nonetheless, they get the energy, they connect with what we're doing on stage, and they just start dancing their own way, feeling the music however they want to feel it. And that's when you notice, okay, there's definitely some common elements between everybody in the world. Like I wouldn't have imagined that they were gonna connect that way with what we were playing. It definitely felt foreign, but the connection was there, the energy was there. I mean, the party started. So yeah, and I've had similar experiences, like in many different places.
Yeah. Now, have you been able to discover some really interesting music from around the world that you can bring back and start incorporating into your own productions?
Oh wow, yes, all the time. I, for example, love going to festivals, and I feel really blessed because in a certain way I get paid to go to play to places that I would pay my own money just to be able to attend.
Yeah.
And I really love just walking around and discovering, like, looking at the artists that play early. Because everybody wants to see the headliners. I want to see the headliners as well. But sometimes you discover like really special artists, like doing crazy stuff that you wouldn't ever have thought about. And that's one of the funnest activities for me when I'm touring, like being able to discover new music and exciting stuff. And there's a lot. There's always people doing crazy stuff with electronic music, and yeah, for sure. There's a lot of new stuff that you can discover all the time.
Yeah, I agree. It's always wise to be around for the opening band if you can when you're on tour, because opening bands, especially here in the U.S., for bands that are driving and touring, the opening bands, that's the local artist a lot of times that is, just trying to figure it out, and they're just coming up with their new idea. I mean, sure, sometimes it's not all great, and sometimes it's a long time to be hanging out at near the stage when you've got a show to play. But there's just a great opportunity to discover the new and unusual and interesting music that way.
Yeah.
I think about bands that I've gone to see on tour, and then some other band opens for them at a show, and you discover all these new cool bands and stuff like that. Now, do a lot of the artists that you would have seen when you're traveling the world, were they doing electronic music, or was it a combination? Is it sometimes folk music or anything really, really local?
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of everything. For example, I remember one artist that really caught my attention. I think she's from the UK, and I think she's kind of famous now. And she's called Kelly Lee Owens, if I'm not mistaken. And I was just walking around on a festival, and suddenly there's a woman on stage with a really minimal setup. She has like a synthesizer, some drum machines, and she sang a little bit, and you would not believe how like the energy that came out of the music she was doing and how the people connected, and it was like it was basically like techno, some kind of techno, but really you could tell she was doing it live. It was not like pre-recorded. She was really messing around with the synthesizers, and it was really exciting. For example, another concert I recall is I saw. Do you know Arca?
No.
Arca is from Venezuela, but I think Arca probably is like the most advanced music producer in the world. Like, she has always been in the vanguard of electronic music. And I remember I saw a DJ set she made, and it's like the craziest DJ set ever. I'm going to tell you how she opened up the DJ set. I had never seen this in my life, but it blew my mind. She recorded. She went on stage. She records the audience screaming, and she makes like a loop with the audience screaming. So the sound of the audience starts like building up, and it grew into the massive, like, amazing noise that you had never heard before. And that just to give you an idea of the kind of things that can open your mind, because you would never have thought of that unless you saw it like somewhere else. And also, I have this one of my favorite bands is called Soulwax. I also discovered that band, seeing them live, like with no expectations of what I was gonna see, and suddenly the stage opens up. There's three drummers like set up in a kind of a triangle shape, and suddenly starts the most amazing sounding electronic. Well, it's hybrid because they have guitars and stuff also, but it's like it blew my mind. Like, it just sounds amazing.
I love hearing about stuff that and I like that, and I love the concept of interacting with the audience to create the music. That's such a brilliant thing to do. It can be a little tricky because then you think, how am I going to do that? There's a new app. Well, for me, it's new, that I've been playing around with called XLN Audio Life. And it's a fun one where you record 15 seconds on your iPhone, and then it immediately puts it into the DAW in a plugin, and it breaks it all onto samples on the keyboard, and it throws it into a beat and stuff. So it could be like a fun way to try and do something similar to that on a stage. Have you ever thought about trying to add the audience to the production from the stage? And do you have any idea how you would do that if you were going to do something like that?
Well, first I have to say that plugin you just talked about. Yeah. I have it on a list. I mean, it's an endless list, but that's one of the plugins I really have to check out soon, because it looks really inspiring. Like, I feel like you can take a plugin like that, and you can just start developing ideas really quickly, and not only developing ideas, but ideas that sound different and that sound exciting. That's definitely on my list.
So there's another one that I just got hip to the other week. It just came out. It's the Jacob Collier Audience Choir from Native Instruments, which is sort of similar. He was doing this thing when he was touring, where he'd conduct the audience and get them to all sing together, kind of like Bobby McFerrin was famous for doing also. And then they decided to record the audience and then turn it into an instrument that you can play. So it's not in the moment in the same way, but it's a cool idea of like incorporating that back. And also, if by the time this comes out, it may still be a free plug-in, Rockstars, so you can go check that out if you want. We'll try and drop a link in the show notes.
That one is also on the list.
Yeah. So how, so how would you do something like that if you were going to record an audience? I mean, maybe it's an unfair question if you're not doing it yet.
No, but it's a fun thing to think about. I have a problem, well, not a problem, but it's always an issue, is that when you work on stage and you try to go too crazy with the vocal processing, there's always the issue of feedback
Right.
And so that would be something to consider. Or for example, another thing that has happened to me on stage is that when I work with a singer that maybe has some autotune, as an effect, maybe a really cranked up autotune like on purpose, suddenly on the in-ear monitors, you can hear the guitar, for example, or even the drums going into the vocal pedal,
Right.
and some kind of funny tuning goes around, and it can really mess up with your head on stage. So that would be another thing to consider. But I think it could be fun, to live sample the audience, maybe like sample a couple of seconds and maybe load it up like on a machine or something, and maybe like start jamming. That, I think that would be like the way I would approach it without giving it too much thought.
Well, I guess in the big festivals you can't really walk out into the audience very easily, but on the smaller shows maybe you could walk out through the crowd and get people to say things into a mic. I remember back when I was in high school, and the first time a band came to demonstrate to us, and this was in the 80s, and they brought a Kurzweil sampling keyboard, and then he just made a sound in a mic for us and then played it on the keyboard, and we were all like, oh, it's magic, It's fun to find something that's just like one step new and different for people to check out and show it off in the
for
stage.
example, you can sample like just a couple of seconds of the audience screaming, and then you can start with the sampler, like tuning it up, tuning it down.
Yeah.
And I think the audience could really quickly understand what's going on, and I think something exciting could come out of that.
Empirical Labs, creators of the famous Distressor, offer high-performance gear for audio pros. The Fatso adds warmth to digital recordings with harmonic generation, tape emulation, and compression. The Pump, a 500 series compressor, features 8 selectable ratios, precise attack and release controls, saturation, and an attack mod for incredible transient control. The Arouser and Big Freak plugins are also available at empiricallabs.com, where you can use the coupon code RSR10 for 10% off. Follow at Empirical Labs on Instagram, making studio gear that works a little easier, a little better, and a lot longer. Native Instruments introduces the new Complete 15 bundle, featuring Contact 8, offering versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative effects. Perfect for creating everything from emotional scores to dance floor grooves. Contact 8 includes exciting new creative tools like chords and phrases for inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a hybrid instrument blending organic and synth sounds. The Complete 15 bundle also includes updated Massive X, Guitar Rig 7 Pro, and AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. All right, so tell us a little bit, give us a short story of your background. You got interested in playing music first, and then, you've started learning how to record, and you found yourself now touring the world and, getting Grammy nominations. So give us the quick version of that if you want.
Okay. To be honest, I don't know why, because no one in my family is a musician or a professional musician. They all love music. But ever since I was really young, probably 8 years old, even less, 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be a musician. I don't know why, but I just knew it deep down. The thing is, I had no idea what being a musician was or in what way I wanted to be a musician. So that made me go through a lot of roads and through a lot of discoveries to come to the point where I am now. So probably the first important musical experience I had is that there was like a really big rock scene in Barranquilla, in my hometown. And that's where I started, like playing with bands, playing guitar. Something I really have to mention also is that the city where I come from has a carnival. We have a yearly carnival. It's a really cultural. It's also a really huge party, but there's a whole cultural like component to this carnival, and folk music is really important and essential to the carnival and to me as a musician and as a person from Colombia. So that's kind of part of my background as well. So I finished school. I go immediately from Barranquilla to Bogota, where I live now, to study music. I wanted to study music, but I decided I wanted to study sound engineering. Now that I think about it, I really didn't have a clue of what sound engineering was, but I have to be honest. I did 3 semesters and I figured out that that was not necessarily my main strength. Like, and also where I studied sound engineering, there was like a big focus on mathematics at the beginning, and I just wanted to make music. You know, I wanted to play, I wanted to compose, and that ended up with me changing from sound engineering to classical composition.
Guitar?
No, like composition. Yeah, like writing for orchestra, writing for strings, studying a lot of contemporary music, which is a lot of dissonance and a lot of weird stuff, which now in looking back feels like an odd choice because it's quite the opposite from making music, for example, that may have some connections to the mainstream. Like it's the opposite, you know?
Yeah. But I bet it really helped you understand arrangement and the different sounds of instruments and how it all goes together into a complete picture.
Yeah, definitely. Like something I really learned from studying classical music is part of what we were talking earlier. Like how is music a language and how you can kind of organize it in a logical way. Now, not all music is logical and now not all music operates that way, but knowing that you can add structure and like organization to the music definitely makes it feel more like a language.
Yeah, when I was in college, they had a music program, but it was only classical. And at that time, I was interested in jazz. I was studying architecture, but I was thinking about switching. And I just thought, I saw the classical and I was like, oh, that's not what I'm into. I don't want to, be in an orchestra or something. I don't want to be Andres Segovia on guitar, which is too bad because I think that in hindsight, I think classical would have been a really great thing to study to, like you said, understand how all the instrumentation goes together. Plus, on top of that, by the time you've recorded and been in a rock band and then learned the studio stuff, eventually you come around to the idea like, ooh, it'd be really cool to do a composition for a film or a video, and try that and actually orchestrate using all the samples. Of course, back then we didn't have samples. It wasn't even an idea yet,
Okay, yeah. For example, one of the concepts that really changed the way I think and understand music is counterpoint, which counterpoint, you can think of that as something like really esoteric and almost like abstract. But the essence of counterpoint is how different elements interact with each other, and how many layers you can actually stack up before it's nonsense or before the brain can stop like really understanding. And one of the situations where I apply most of my counterpoint lessons, for example, is when recording in the studio. So we have different instruments playing at the same time. How can you really give space to each one so they all feel important, they all have their moment, but they all work together to create like something bigger than the sum of its parts. So yeah, definitely there's a lot to learn from classical music, and especially like thinking of how you can apply those time-tested like discoveries and rules and however you want to see it to whatever's going on now and whatever catches like your ear or interests you.
Yeah, so one of those tracks in your discography is Me Duele, the if I'm pronouncing that right, the Bomba Estereo and Manu Chao. And it really sounds good. In fact, it really stood out to me as a wonderful example of the dance beat. Listening to it in my car, the bass just was kicking. It just sounded like, yes, you could just turn the stereo all the way up, you know? And that, I believe that's one where you're playing guitar on it as well, right?
Yes, exactly.
And there's something about the guitar that sounds like you have an appreciation for that kind of counterpoint arrangement and keeping the guitar part interesting.
Okay.
Tell us about that story, and then tell us about, how do you put something like that together? Like, we haven't even talked about your studio yet. So talk about some of the tools you like to use.
Okay, I'm glad that you asked about Me Duele, because that's where I was going soon with my story. So after all this time in the university, I started really playing with any band that wanted to have me. Like I played with a lot of musicians, like a lot of experience playing clubs and playing all around the country, until that led to getting the Bomba Estereo call. And that was probably what changed my life. Like, if there was a turning point in my life, it was getting the call to audition for Bomba. I decided I had to win that audition however I could. So I just got I separated a week where all I did was like really get into the songs, like really learn them, really play them, and I was blessed to have like a really cool connection with the rest of the band when I did the audition. Mm-hmm. And so after like rehearsing for not really a long time, it was like 2 weeks of rehearsals, and then we went on the first tour where I told you, to Tromsø, to Norway. And after playing with them for a while, like there was a really cool connection with them, and they opened the door for me to to propose ideas. So the first time I collaborated with them creatively was when we were opening for a tour for Arcade Fire. We opened a tour for them in South America.
Right on.
One of the coolest experiences, like amazing band. And they did, Bomba Estereo made a remix of a song of Arcade Fire, and they invited me to record some guitars. So that was the first time like I participated like actively, creatively with Bomba. And after that, when the time came for a new album, they told me, Jose, if you have ideas, please, they're welcome. So that was really exciting for me. It was a challenge I had been expecting like for a long time in my life, because even though I produced and I composed and I made music personally, I had really not started working with other artists or having those kinds of sessions.
Right. It's like learning that time where you've been playing guitar by yourself, and the first time you get to play with other people, and it's a whole new experience.
Yeah, exactly. So I set up to write as many ideas as I could. And it was beautiful because it was really intuitive. Like I didn't set myself up with like some impossible mission of writing, like the best music. No, it's just, okay, whatever comes out. Yeah. And I'm happy that was my attitude at the moment, because it's not always like that. But in this occasion, I made a bunch of ideas, a lot with guitar, some with synths, some with beats, and I sent them over. And it was a long time before I heard anything like, we like this, we don't like. I didn't know anything. I had no idea. But suddenly, like a lot of months after I sent them, we were on an airport, just like relaxed, waiting for the flight. And Simon, which is one of the members of the band, he tells me, Jose, have you heard this? And he puts me some headphones on, and I start hearing like the guitar of Me Duele. And suddenly, okay, I hear Liliana, which is the lead singer of Bomba Estereo. She starts to sing, and it's like, oh my god, wow! I'm so excited. This is amazing. And suddenly, I hear Manu Chao's voice. Manu Chao had been a hero of mine for so long. Like one of the first real rock concerts that I saw, like was here in Bogota, and it was Manu Chao like playing ska in front of a lot of people, and it was mind blowing. It was crazy. So suddenly I hear that Liliana and Manu Chao are singing in what started as a beat that I did here in my house, like with a guitar and some drum machine, and it was crazy. It was crazy for me. So I'm glad that you brought that song up, because that was the first song that eventually became a Bomba Stereo song from one of the tracks that I started.
That's great. And then so did you get to so that you started that one, and then that one continues on, and then they finish it themselves, or do they bring you back in as part of the finishing process too?
Yes, I was that song. I have to be honest, it took a long time. Like some songs take a while.
Yeah.
And after that initial like demo, like other members of the band started contributing as well. So there's some percussion. Then a friend called Truco, who's an amazing producer, he also added some layers to the beat. Then it came back to me. Like I kind of cleaned it up a little, because there was a time where it was just tons of information, and that's like the final version. Like I was happy to be able to finalize that song, because it meant such a big deal to me. And yeah, that was kind of the process.
Now, do you feel like EDM production and dance beats, is there a process that always involves adding stuff and reaching too much? Is it common for that sort of production to just have too much stuff, like you throw everything at it and then you have to like carve it away like a sculptor to bring it back down to the basics? Or is it all kinds of different things? Is this sometimes you do a minimal thing and it's perfect and that's just the way it stays?
I think minimalism is hard, but I think effective minimalism is even harder. Like it's really easy when you have like infinite VSTs and like infinite plugins, and you can like really go crazy stacking like synths over one another. But I personally always try to not go overboard, in the sense that there's always a point where if you add something else, it's not adding, but it's taking away.
Right.
So I really try to keep this in mind and not go overboard, because it has happened to me before. Like sometimes when there's so many elements, it's harder for the audience to connect with the really essential elements in the song in that moment. So maybe if let's say you want to make a song for people to dance to, and suddenly you have like this really elaborated beat with a lot of synths doing a lot of different stuff, the overload of information can take away from the experience of the audience that simply wants to really connect and dance to something simple, So that's something that I really try to keep in mind when making music. But right now, it's also there's stages. I had a stage where I just decided that being a minimalist was cool, so I started doing really minimal stuff, and then I felt like, okay, but this is not really hitting the spots I wanted to hit. So I went to the other side. Okay, now I'm gonna crank everything up. I'm gonna make the beats hit hard.
Yeah.
And over time, I realized that it's not about being minimalist, and it's also not about being maximalist. It's about like each idea that you work on has a special essence, has a special thing it wants to communicate, and sometimes no, and every time the idea should be the most important part. Like the idea should dictate how minimalist or how maximalist you should be. It's also a thing of intuition, of feeling, okay, it's just right. The vibe is perfect with what I have here. If I add something, I'm going to ruin it. If I take something away, the message will not come across. So it's like navigating that fine line for me.
Yeah, well, when you play, these Latin dance beats like cumbia and stuff like that, when you play as an ensemble, it's a little easier sometimes maybe to understand how all the parts are going together and know how to minimalize. Do you sometimes feel like when you're building it one thing at a time, it can be a little trickier because it's hard to, because sometimes you build it and then you look, I think about it as like building a house, you put down all the bricks and everything and then you end up with this thing and you're like, oops, that doesn't look like a house,
Yeah, that I think when you work by yourself, it's really easy like to lose yourself down rabbit holes that only you listen to and that only you pay attention to, like, for example, if I'm by myself, I can stay hours and hours like tweaking a kick drum, and the difference of whatever it is I did, the audience will never even have a clue that I spent that time on just one element, and they also won't care probably. Like they only care if they feel the power of the kick drum and they feel the energy and it moves them. So I think that working with a band does bring some kind of immediacy to the process, but also I have to be honest. Each time more and more, I've been working from far away. Like I've done a bunch of productions where I sometimes haven't met the artists like in person. Or for example, Damian, to whom I have to thank for the invitation. I worked with Damian on this album of Bomba Estereo for a long time before I even met him in person. So that's quite common these days. And in a way, collaborating with other people, even if you're not in the same room, also helps you keep that perspective of not losing your way like on intricacies and like going down crazy rabbit holes.
Sick of searching for the right cable or wondering how to hook up your studio? Trace Audio has you covered. Based in Nashville but serving studios everywhere, Trace Audio specializes in custom cables, patch bay labels, and wiring solutions for home and pro studios. Try out the free online custom patch bay label designer at traceaudio.com to easily color code, label, and organize your XLR or quarter-inch bays, which are popular with home studios. It's sleek, professional, and simple to use. Then use the code RSR15 for 15% off printing and shipping your custom patch bay labels to take your studio to the next level.
Someone asked me a while back, do you fear AI will one day replace you as a mastering engineer? Well, it hasn't yet. That's because algorithms don't listen to music or to clients. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. When I master, I experience the music as your fans will, with the honesty of fresh ears. And unlike AI, I master with your intentions in mind, not merely to process the mix and boost the levels. If you want an experienced live engineer to master your music as only a human can, find me at soundporter.com.
Yeah, it's fun to have an idea and then somebody else takes it and then gives it back to you, and they've had a new interpretation on it because then you can discover whole new elements of the music, that you never would have thought of before. Sometimes I also find it's difficult because sometimes we have to be careful that we aren't too forgiving. In other words, sometimes the music comes back and if we just say, oh, cool, it's different, we really need to say, yeah, but it really could be better if we do this thing. So that can be a hard balance sometimes, you know?
Yeah, that's always an interesting exercise. It's not always easy. Most of the times it's not easy, but I think it's really humbling and important to consider that another person will listen to your work in a completely different way than how you listen. So there's no one really is right. There's no way to say, okay, I'm right, or you're, or the other person is right, or I'm wrong, or whatever. So it's always a conversation. It's always an interaction, and I think it's really valuable to go constantly through that experience of working with other people and taking into consideration their input, even if you in under a first impression you might feel no, the other person is wrong. Like you're never gonna know who is wrong or who's right, but just reevaluating your ideas and constantly thinking that you can improve and that things can become richer when other people's input comes in. I think that's one of the most valuable like takeaways you can have from collaborating.
Well, the dance floor will tell you.
Yeah, always. The dance floor never lies.
Yeah, the dance floor never lies. I love it. I got to write that one down. The the funny thing is you said like they won't care. And thinking about it, it's like, of course, they're not supposed to care. The whole point of dancing is you're supposed to not care, right? You're supposed to just let it all out. Stop caring.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us about your studio. What are you surrounded by? What are some of the things that help you make the music you make?
Okay, when I started, for example, most of the album Deja, which is the one we've been discussing about, a lot of it was written on a tour bus. So it was basically the same Apollo Twin that I have, which is my interface. I hooked up my guitar straight to the interface and just recording with no amp and just playing around with the synths inside Ableton Live, which is what I use.
Do you bring a keyboard with you too? Or do you use the laptop keys?
I've used the laptop keys a lot, and there's something to it.
And did you say Ableton Live? That's the other thing I wanted to ask you. Is that the
Ableton Live. I love Ableton Live. I really connected with Ableton, and I want to say I'm self-taught. It's not entirely true because you always watch like YouTube tutorials, but I feel like I'm self-taught because I really I opened it, started messing around, and I think I really connected with the software and the way I make music like really flows or really connects with the flow that I get from Ableton Live. Mm-hmm. I tried Pro Tools for a while in college, but I never really connected to it. I understand that for some specific engineering, like heavy engineering duties, nothing competes with Pro Tools. But what I really enjoy and what gets me going is like getting creative and just being able to mess around with the sound in a creative way. And I think nobody does it like Ableton Live.
So have you found that, so next question, how do you hear it when you're working? So you've got this Apollo Twin with you, you've got a laptop. Do you just bring a pair of headphones, and do you have a favorite pair of headphones? And then talk about what you've learned about composing and doing all this stuff with headphones. What are things that you get right? What are things that you've gotten wrong before? And what warnings do you have for the rock stars if they want to start composing and working in headphones?
Yeah, that's one of the tough lessons that you learn, because one of the advantages for me with headphones is that I can really go into details and like listen to, like I can move really small percentages of effects that on the headphones you can really perceive the difference.
Yeah.
But then when you bring it out to the real world, like there's really no difference to that nuance. Like it's really hard. Like you have to be in a really controlled ambience with some really great speakers to hear some of the stuff that by tweaking on the headphones you really hear. But I think both experiences are necessary. Like I have really enjoyed going deep into. I've learned a great deal, for example, by tweaking stuff around and really being able to hear in headphones what I'm doing. But then realizing that doesn't translate as well to the real world. Like there's something huge to learn in that. So, but both approaches.
And the real world means speakers, or the real world like, even okay.
Yeah, like speakers,
like a dance floor,
or a dance floor, or or a stage, or even a rehearsal space. Like sometimes I work on music here in this room, and for some reason I never try it on my speakers, and then I go to rehearse to play the song live, and suddenly all the balances are different, and things you thought were standing out, you cannot really hear them. Or sometimes, for example, sometimes you worry a lot about having stereo image of some instruments, and then when you go play live, you only have one monitor on stage, and suddenly everything sounds different, and you go, what's going on? And maybe a lot of stuff is just getting canceled, and there's not a good mono translation. And I think nowadays it's crucial to really, if you work mainly on headphones, you really have to go not out of your way, but you really have to make the effort to listen on a system. It doesn't have to be an expensive system, just something that gives you an idea of the real world. Or for example, something that happened to me with my band, with my project Paraísos, is that we used to be like an electronic duo. Right now we have live drums as well, but in the beginning it was just electronic duo, and we rehearsed just with headphones, like in the living room of the house.
Yeah.
And we thought everything sounding beautiful, and then when we go on stage, we're gonna play a concert. Maybe not with the best technical situation, and suddenly when you go from rehearsing on headphones and then having like the sound blasted to your face from a monitor in the floor, it's a completely different experience.
Right, and that'll mess you up. And I've learned that too, that the experience of rehearsing and then getting on a stage to play, basically what I've learned is the stage is weird. It's just weird, and stuff sounds so weird sometimes. And your voice or your acoustic guitar coming back to you, you're just like, good Lord. So, I have an old Vocal Master PA set up upstairs, and it's kind of bad in a good way,
Okay.
And so like, I always try and practice on that before I have any gigs, so I can get used to all the things that are going to be so weird and not sound right, and like practicing with earplugs in, stuff like
Exactly.
that, just getting ready for what it's going to really be like on a stage when things are out of control.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the best you can do. And also a stage is weird because let's say if I have in-ears, maybe I'm listening to everything perfectly, and maybe it sounds almost like a record, but then you're isolated from the audience, so you're not really hearing the audience, which is a huge part of playing live. Like, it's the whole point. So it starts getting even weirder, because then you think, okay, why do I really need perfect sound, or do I need to have a clearer indication of what's going on with the audience? But then if I only take one earpiece, like, it messes up with your head. And
you're saying sometimes you take one earpiece out so you hear the audience.
Yeah,
but then
exactly.
It doesn't feel right in the headphones.
It doesn't feel right. So yeah, I think it's never gonna be perfect.
Yeah. Well, now let's bring it back to the studio, because of course we're mostly focused on the studio, but sometimes we play live. The experience of listening to what you're working on, going from headphones to speakers. I just got a new MacBook Pro laptop, and I don't know if you do this, but it's a common story for me and probably a lot of the rock stars listening to have a really old computer and then get a new one and you leap like 12 years or something like that, you know? So that's what I just did. And listening to all your mixes also on the laptop speakers, this laptop speakers have really come a long way. So what do you think about that? Do you sometimes find that listening and checking your mixes on the laptop speakers is helpful? Do you find that it is a terrible idea? Are there other speakers that you like to use to listen and check your mixes?
Okay, I have to say that I just got a new MacBook Pro as well, and the leap is, I cannot believe it. It's a total different experience. Just to give you an example of something that I'm really happy with right now is that I can open loads and loads of plugins and of virtual synthesizers with the lowest
buffer setting,
exactly,
yeah.
the buffer.
Yeah.
So there's no latency, which is something I've suffered with a lot in the past.
Now the first question everybody's going to want to ask you is, how much RAM did you decide to put in your laptop to be able to do that?
I put, let me check.
I think my new one is only 16.
Okay.
And I was told at the store, they're like, yeah, you're used to thinking about needing lots of RAM with an old computer. With the new computers, it's different. I don't know if that's really true. So I'm curious what you think.
I splurged on the RAM. I went 32, yeah.
32?
Yeah.
I'm returning my laptop. No, it's all right. I'll be fine.
But yeah, probably it's overkill. I don't know. But I'm really happy right now with all the possibilities. But going back to your question, this is also one of the lessons that you learn along the way. And right now, when I send a song to mix and it comes back, I take it in every system I can. Like not only on the laptop speakers, but also on the cell phone speakers. Also, on the portable, like a JBL.
Right, the Bluetooth speaker. Yeah, because those have their own version of pumping bass that you have to get right.
Exactly, and it's really different. And if you really think of, like, I love listening to music, but if I'm hanging out with my wife, for example, in the living room, and we want to listen to music, if we're not listening to vinyl, most of the time we're gonna be listening to music, for example, on the television. Mm-hmm. Like with no additional speakers. So that's a source you have to check as well.
Now, whenever somebody gets a TV, there's a built-in music player, and it's just easy to put it on and have that be the background.
Or just like opening YouTube and it doing its own thing. Mm-hmm. And we also listen a lot on this small JBL speaker. So that's something that you really have to check. And also the car. The car is essential. Like if it doesn't sound good in the car, there's something wrong. There's probably something wrong.
Now, I think it's fair to also ask about stage. Now, your stage experience is a little bit different. You're talking about composing and then having to hear it back as monitors. But the other side of the stage is, I've heard people talk about how what we think is appropriate for the bass and the low end in a home studio setting could be a little bit different from what's going to work coming out of the big, huge speakers at a club where there's subs and all this, jacked up low end.
Yeah, exactly. I was speaking with a friend that is a great front of house engineer, and I asked him, like, because he also mixes for recordings, and I asked him, like, do you do something different? Is there like a different approach? And basically what he told me is that the main difference right now is the low end, the bass. like in a live situation, you're probably want more bass, and you can like really crank it and make it powerful. Whereas if you're in your house, maybe you don't have the right equipment that will allow for the bass to translate in that situation.
So are you saying that you add more bass to the mix, or that you keep it conservative and that the system adds more bass?
I think the sound engineer, the live sound engineer, adds like exciters to the bass.
Right.
I think that, yeah, I've heard of some artists that mix the music differently for when it's gonna be played live.
Yeah.
Like maybe
now, do you hear your songs? Like for example, let's see. Let me back up here. The Lo que no me mata.
Okay.
Paresos. Really great dance album. And these are all in the show notes, Rockstar, so you can scroll down after we're talking, or if you take a break and go listen to any of these tracks. But really great EDM style dance production, pop songs. Do you get a chance to hear them just in DJ clubs where you have a new understanding of the low end and what you like and what you don't like?
I've had the opportunity. It's not always accessible. Like
you can't
not
be
always,
everywhere in the world all at once.
Yeah, exactly. But I have, for example, maybe I'm in a sound check for Bomba Estereo, and there's always like time to kill, or sometimes the sound engineer is just playing around, like listening to stuff, like just starting to calibrate the system. And if there's time, and sometimes I ask for the favor, I would like to listen just to see how it sounds. And it's an amazing exercise that really, really, really gives you like a new perspective. Yeah.
And then do you think that the sound off a stage in an outdoor festival is going to be very different probably from the sound in a club?
It's totally different.
Yeah.
It's really different. I think every stage, every kind of stage has its advantages and disadvantages. And going back to something a little bit nerdy about classical music, like in the past, people wrote music really projected to where it was going to be played. I think that has become a little bit lost, like in the present.
Well, you brought up Arcade Fire, and yeah. I've seen them play at the Bonnaroo Festival down here. Okay. And I was standing on stage, behind, being able to look down at the stage from above and look out at the audience. And what I realized, what clicked for me when I saw them, was I felt like I understood the evolution of band music, where sometimes bands start out writing songs that make sense in their apartment, their house rehearsal, and then they understand how to make songs that make sense from a small club stage, and then they get bigger and bigger, and then eventually bands start writing these big anthem songs that are simpler but huger, that work great from a big stage. And so like hearing you talk about that too, I think there's really a thing, like bands start to learn how to write for the stage that they're going to be on.
Definitely, and it should be that way. For example, if in the past, let's say you're going to write a piece that is going to be played in a church or in a cathedral that has a reverb time of, I don't know, 5 seconds or even more, it's totally different than if you're going to be playing outdoors and the instruments are going to glue together themselves in a different way. So you have to keep that in mind. Or let's say if you're a drummer and you're playing like a huge stage, a stadium maybe, and you go crazy with fills and hi-hat, ghost notes and a lot of stuff, that's not gonna translate so clearly to such a massive audience. And maybe you have to keep it simpler, but bigger. Simpler is also bigger in a way, in a crazy way. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really something that you learn along the way. and it does make a difference.
Atom Audio is proud to announce the new D3V active desktop monitor system and H200 dynamic closeback studio headphones designed in Berlin and perfect for pro-level monitoring in a home studio setting. The D3V is a fully active desktop monitoring system featuring 3.5-inch woofers and hand-folded ribbon tweeters for studio-quality sound in a compact form in elegant white or black finish. It's perfect for songwriters, producers, podcasters, and mixers with digital input over USB-C or balanced analog inputs, and includes a headphone output and DSP room acoustic switches. The H200 is Atom Audio's new closed-back studio headphone, featuring 40mm peak drivers and memory foam ear pads in a durable metal construction with a detachable main cable for dual-sided connectivity, making the H200s reliable for demanding studio use. With an impedance of just 32 ohms, they will sound great with your studio or laptop and include a plug-in for enhanced tonal control and stereo spatialization, so you never have to leave the sweet spot. To see the new D3V monitors and H200 headphones, go to atomaudio.com. iZotope is truly amazing for mixing and mastering your music, like the new iZotope Plasma plugin featuring flux saturation, which helps you sculpt the harmonics in your sound, enhancing the excitement and clarity of your tracks or mixes. And Ozone, with its built-in mastering assistant, helps you analyze your mix, suggesting all the settings you need for a professionally mastered result based on your chosen style of music and EQ curve, referencing a specific song if you want. Ozone features sophisticated yet simple modules like clarity, impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting, allowing you to adjust the settings to your taste so it sounds incredible. And with the magic of master rebalance, you can even manipulate the vocal, bass, and drums separately at the mastering stage. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Plasma Ozone RX or any of the fantastic plugins at iZotope.com. All right, you ready to jam?
Ready to jam, man.
All right, cool, man. Glad to have you back. Let's jump into the fun, nerdy stuff now. Let's get into the studio stuff. Let's talk about making cool sounds.
Okay,
so you're using Ableton Live, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And let me see if I can find which one I wanted to ask you about first, because I had a bunch of questions. Okay, let's talk about 555, The Change, Paris.
Okay.
That track has a quality to it. So when I listen, and I listen carefully, I realize that there's like a pumping, bouncing effect on the vocals, or on the effects on the vocals. And you can hear it even before the beat drops. You hear like this pumping thing, this bounce that makes you think about like how it's about to start getting, the dance beat is coming. What are some good ways to do that? What are some good ways to make the vocal and the effects work well in a dance mix and give it that bounce quality? Do you intentionally do things like use sidechain compression or something to push the effects out of the way so the vocals, you can hear them, and then you hear the effects on the vocals come in between the lines? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. I love sidechain. I really do love sidechain. And also, I think it's an effect that has been overused. I think you hear it a lot of in a lot of music, you hear it. But also, I feel it's interesting trying to find ways of using elements that have been overused for a while, and try to find like new exciting ways to or less obvious ways to use it, you know? So I think there's a lot to be explored in sidechaining still. I use it like I use the normal stock Ableton Live compressor most of the time, but I have started using a plugin that I discovered recently, and it's called Shaperbox.
Shaperbox, yeah.
Have you seen that plugin?
I know about it. Yeah,
Okay.
I know Shaperbox Volume Shaper. Is that one of the ones from there, or is that?
Yeah, it has. I'm really just starting to get into the plugin, but there's some really crazy like side chaining stuff you can do with it, because you can basically draw what you want. Side chaining is like volume automation in a way, right?
Maybe break it down for the rock stars. Explain what it is and why it gets used. You can talk about sidechain and then talk about Shaperbox.
Okay, so sidechaining, the way I understand it, is basically you take two elements. Let's say you have a kick drum and you have a synthesizer, and you can set it up for each time that the kick drum sounds, the volume of the synthesizer goes down, and you can decide how low you want the volume to go, how quickly do you want it to go down, and then back up again. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically, sidechaining compression is like doing that in a kind of automatic way.
Yeah, so you're compressing, instead of compressing the kick drum, you're compressing the other stuff, but you're having the kick drum control the compression on the other stuff.
Exactly, and you can do all sorts of crazy things, like using the kick drum to compress not only a synthesizer but a vocal, or just an effect, like you were saying earlier. Like you can have the voice sounding normal, and then you decide an element that when that element sounds, maybe a new crazy reverb pops up, or a delay or something like that. Like there's really lots of area to play around with the sidechaining.
So, I mean, I think sometimes the first question that comes to mind is why does it exist? Why do we do it? Or why does it happen? And I think the first time I learned about it, I thought, okay, it's a cool, fancy trick where maybe it pushes the bass out of the way when the kick drum happens, so that there's a little room for the kick to punch. And then the bass comes rushing in, because if you didn't do that, it's too much all at once and it sounds lumpy or something. And I think that's slightly true, but also sidechaining has just become, and especially with these Shaperbox tools and things like that, it's just become a cool way to add a rhythmic bounce to the sounds. And in dance music, it's all about the way everything bounces, right?
Yes, totally. Like another way to use sidechain, which I use a lot, is like it can be really subtle too. It doesn't have to be like this crazy pumping effect. It can be just really subtle, but it kind of glues everything together and gets everything like into the groove. So it enhances the groove. Like you can, something I do a lot is that let's say I have all the elements of my beat, and I separate the kick from all the rest, and I sidechain all the rest of the beat to the kick. That includes hi-hats, maybe the snare as well, maybe the toms, and it adds to the overall feeling, and it's just subtle, but if when done right, everything like dances together. Maybe another application, perhaps a bit more technical than creative, is maybe you have a vocal, and maybe you have a pad, a synth pad, or something in the same range of the vocal, and maybe you want the whenever the vocal is sounding, maybe you want the pad to go a little bit down, and then when the vocal stops, the pad comes a little bit up again, and that keeps things like clean, and it helps when various elements are like sharing the same space.
Yeah, so I think that's good the way what you're pointing out. So earlier you talked about how sometimes there's a lot of stuff in the mix.
Yeah.
And it becomes congested, and it's like, how do you get it all in there? One way to deal with it is you start taking things away. And another way to deal with it is what you suggested, which is this is where the tricky stuff that feels technical comes in. Like you're subtly pushing a synth sound that might have the same frequencies as the vocal. You're pushing it out of the way when the voice happens, but then it rushes back in afterwards.
Exactly.
And I think that's the stuff that, makes us think like, ooh, we're so smart as engineers. We, these subtle tricks that you don't notice, you don't realize it's happening to you. That's the magic, right? The magic trick in the mix.
No,
but then the other side of it is what you described, which is it's really obvious. You're hearing sounds bounce up and down, but then it becomes a creative choice.
Yes, definitely. And I have to say, one of the things I regret now in my life is I wish I would have studied and finished my studies on sound engineering.
Right.
Because I've been learning stuff along the way, but I mean, it's such a beautiful, deep art, and there's so much to discover. And all my admiration to people like you that really cultivate the beauty in sound, and capturing it, and it's a whole art within itself.
Well, I mean, it's fun for me. I mean, I love just geeking out on all these tricks and things, and for me, one of the thrills of doing the podcast and talking about this stuff, or when I watch somebody else's video on YouTube or listen to a podcast, it's just the takeaway. It's like, ooh, that sounds cool. I want to go try that,
Yeah.
I mean, that's my hope, Rockstars, is that you hold on to one idea after this, and the next time you hit the studio, you're like, I'm going to go try that thing out. One of the records, again, Lo que no me mata, para esos palmeras, that one really did the pumping, the side chain and the volume shaper really well. So that might be a good one to listen to, Rockstars, just for an example of what we're talking about. Another one that is similar, that is kind of a new tool for us, is dynamic EQ, Jose, right?
Okay.
So again, with dynamic EQ, sometimes you can just push a certain part of the frequency out of the way and trigger it with the kick drum, or you can have the vocal. Actually, let's back that up. When you were talking about the vocal, that's an example where the synth has the compressor on it, but it's the vocal that's doing the side chain, right? Not the kick drum.
Yeah, exactly. The vocal is the one that is being pumped up and down.
Right. So the vocal is telling the synth to get out of the way whenever the singer's voice comes in for a moment on the mic.
Oh, and something I do a lot, that I don't know if it was intended to be done this way, but sometimes there might not even be a kick drum sounding on the track, but I have like a silent kick track that is still doing the work of side chaining. So I have the effect and I have the feeling, but you don't know what's causing it because the kick drum is not sounding.
Right. So I think that was the 555, the Change Paris track.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that one has that, because at the beginning you can hear the bouncing on the vocals and stuff, but there's no beat yet.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
So that's pretty cool. And that's, and I've heard people talk about having also, so in your example, you said there's a kick drum, but it's silent. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's just not feeding the stereo mix, but it's actually in there feeding the side chain. Is that the idea?
Yeah, but sometimes it can affect, like you can also make the silent kick affect like auxiliary return effects. So maybe you have a big reverb that is affecting everything, and the subtle movement that the kick is adding to the sidechain adds to the movement and the vibe of the whole track. So you can use it that way as well, like affecting absolutely everything in the mix, or just like really specific elements?
So, how do you discover some of these things? So, if you're telling the rock stars who are thinking, I want to try this out, what's a good way to start? And you talked about, or before the interview, you talked about just the concept of starting a song from the beat. So maybe give us a walkthrough. Like if you were going to explain to somebody, here's a place to start. Let's start building a small session in Ableton, and just so we can think about like the elements that we put in, and then start experimenting with like coming up with a sound that sounds cool.
Okay. Actually, that this year, I rethought, and my process is completely different right now. But for a really long time, my process started actually with the beat. Like the beat was for a long time the most important aspect, and it was my focus. And later on, I can talk a little bit of why that changed. But like a good starting point might be, let's say you go to a club or you go to a party or anything, and let's say you hear a track and you say, okay, I love this track. I love how it makes me feel. I love the vibe. And then that is something very inspiring for me. Like I'm obsessed with Shazam. Like I Shazam music all the time.
Oh, right.
Like discovering constantly music. And
well, let's say what that is in case the rock stars missed that. So if you're not familiar with it, if you have an iPhone, the Shazam is, I forget what the icon is. It's like a little lightning bolt,
like
or
a
something
little,
like that.
a little
But
blue thing.
It will let you hold your phone up and say, what song is this? And you just hold your phone up, and then it hears it over the speakers, and it tells you who the artist was.
Exactly. I've discovered lots and lots of music this way. And let's say there's something that you like and something that inspires you, and you want to learn how to make beats. Like a cool challenge is, okay, I want to try to make something in the spirit of this track that I heard. Like it's not exactly like copying what you hear, but it is definitely being inspired by the track that you like. And in the process of recreating like this vibe that you're after, you're gonna learn a whole lot, and not only learn, but you're gonna start discovering things that you might like or things that you might not like so much. And the more that you repeat the process, like you're gonna start developing your own language and your own way of doing stuff. But
so do you have a process where you use Shazam and then you just make a note and you keep a list of songs that you like, and then later in the studio, what do you do next to start trying to copy a song to figure it out?
No, for example, let's say I like a song that is maybe Afrobeats, so another big part of the challenge is you need to find sounds that work within the genre you want to make music in, but also sounds that you like, because sometimes, let's say it has happened to me. I want to make some, I want to make house music, for example. And you find a pack on the internet, a drum pack of house music. And then I start listening to the sounds, and not all the sounds maybe are to my liking necessarily.
Yeah.
So, but that's an important part of the process, also discovering what sounds you like and what sounds you don't like, what sounds inspire you.
Where are some places where you find sounds?
Okay, all over the place. For example, do you know Mike Dean, the producer Mike Dean?
Mm-mm.
Okay, he's an amazing producer. He has worked with Kanye West, Travis Scott, with a lot of
cool.
And in an interview he goes like, I get my sounds from Reddit. Like you go to a Reddit forum and you write, trap, drum pack, and That's certainly a way to do
And
it.
then
But
somebody puts a link in somewhere and you just
yeah, exactly.
get it.
But today you have so many options. There's Splice. You can go to Splice, and there's a lot of drum sounds, like from any genre you can think of.
Now,
also,
let me ask you this question.
Okay.
What do you do to avoid too many options? Because sometimes I think it can be overwhelming. There's so much out there that you just like, I don't know where to start.
It's always overwhelming. But I have to say, some of the things I'm talking about right now, I learned actually from Damian.
Yeah.
He has a really special community going on, and he has some amazing courses where he teaches like so much valuable information. And
That's Damian Taylor, Rockstars, who we were thanking at the beginning of the podcast. And if you haven't listened,
legend.
we've got a couple of interviews on Recording Studio Rockstars with Damian too, so you can check those out.
So one of the things I learned from Damian is that it's always going to be overwhelming. There's always going to be more choices. But if you take the time, like if you set aside some time just to go through what you have and simply making a really intuitive choice of, okay, I like this sound, I don't like this sound. And you make a pre-selection from all that is available. You make just a small selection that you really love. And you say, okay, you limit yourself. Like, okay, this is my toolbox, and this is what I'm going to work with right now. And you just get to making music just by taking, I don't know, an hour of your day and selecting the sounds you want to use for a period of time. Like that really takes away the FOMO, like the fear of missing out of this really cool new sound that just came out or something like that.
Elevate your music production with the updated Complete 15 bundle from Native Instruments, featuring the new Contact 8. This comprehensive collection includes a fantastic range of versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative studio effects, giving you everything you need to bring your creative vision to life. Whether you're composing emotional scores, crafting deep dance floor grooves, or experimenting with unique sound design, Complete 15 has got you covered. Discover powerful plugins and instruments that guide you from the initial idea to the final mix. The included Contact 8 introduces exciting new tools like chords and phrases for instant inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a cutting-edge hybrid instrument that merges organic and synth sounds in real time. Plus, enjoy revamped versions of Massive X and Guitar Rig 7 Pro to take your sound even further. Then, polish off your mixes with the AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11, included in the Complete 15 bundle. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Empirical Labs, creators of the iconic Distressor, offer high-performance gear for audio professionals. The Fatso, or Full Analog Tape Simulator and Optimizer, brings the warmth of vintage tape and tube electronics to your digital recordings. Perfect for mixes, masters, or overdubs by adding harmonic generation, high-frequency saturation, tape emulation, and compression. The impressive new Pump, a 500 series classic knee compressor, shares its DNA with the analog Distressor and Arouser plugin. It features 8 selectable compression ratios, precise attack and release controls, saturation, a high-pass filter, and a first-time ever attack mod for added transient control, which is ideal for adding more snap to your snare drum. All Empirical Labs products are hand-assembled and tested right down to the circuit boards in northern New Jersey, USA, for durability and performance, designed to last and be easily updated. Go to empiricallabs.com to find the Arouser and Big Freak plugins, where you can use the coupon code RSR10 for 10% off. Remember to follow @Empirical Labs on Instagram, making studio gear that works a little easier, a little better, and a lot longer. How do you like to organize your sounds so that you know where to find them? I know Ableton Live does a great job of keeping the sounds available over on the side, and then you can even search for them and stuff like that. I don't remember whether the newer one even listens for the sound of the sounds.
Oh, okay. Actually, now I got to the point where, and this really changed the whole game for me. And is that after choosing the sounds, I load them up to a hardware unit that can be
a disc or something.
Like a sampler.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
A sampler. So to talk a little bit more about the studio, I have a drum machine that I love. It's called the Electron Analog Rhythm, and it's a beautiful machine because it's actually a drum synth. Like, it generates its own sounds, but it's also a sampler. So in a way, that's all I need, like, to make beats nowadays. And that also limits my options, because if I'm working directly on Ableton Live, I have infinite possibilities of adding tracks and adding percussion and adding, like little elements. If I have found that limiting myself to this drum machine that has 12 channels, and I can work with synthesized drum sounds, but also with drum samples that I found on Reddit or on Splice or anywhere.
So there's a little bit of a limitation that you give yourself.
Yes,
and that
totally.
Helps.
Yeah, that helps a lot. That helps a lot. It makes all the difference.
Yeah.
So right now, my process is I look for my sounds, I load them up on this machine, I make my beats on the hardware, and then I record onto Ableton Live whatever I did on the Electro machine. And it's pretty cool because the machine lets you, through USB, there's this thing called Overbridge. So I can record back into Ableton Live the 12 channels of the drum machine separately, which is like in one take. So this is just beautiful. But I also have the flexibility. For example, if I want to then take the kick drum that I have and go back into Ableton Live, but before going into Ableton, I can go through guitar pedals or through my preamp, and I can go crazy, like making sounds and just having fun.
So is it the Electron Rhythm? Is that the one?
Electron
RYTM?
Analog Rhythm Mark II. That's the one.
Cool.
It's a really
I know
cool
there's
machine.
a lot of options out there, like Native Instruments Machine is one.
I also have the machine. Which I love. The machine is amazing. I use the machine plus live because it's a sampler and it doesn't need a computer. So working live, it's amazing. But also on the studio, I perhaps use the machine more as an actual sampler, like when I want to sample off from records and
because it probably has the inputs for the turntable and all that.
Exactly, it has all the inputs. I can sample directly from YouTube or from wherever I want.
Now, the Electron Analog Rhythm, it's a hardware unit that you actually import all the sounds into, and then you export back out to Ableton when you're done, as opposed to just a MIDI controller, which keeps everything in the computer. Are there some things that you find beneficial about you exporting the stuff out to the hardware unit and then coming back in? Does it just sort of get you away from Ableton for a minute so that it's more playful or something?
Exactly. It gets me like in a position where what I'm doing is a bit more hands-on, a little more interactive, a little more visual in a way. And I have just discovered that it works for me, and it also gives me the flexibility, as I said, to go easily through guitar pedals, which
Right.
I love, and I think it's become a part of my sound as a producer, and it's like treating everything as a guitar going through pedals.
Yeah.
Even vocals. I love that. Like going out of Ableton, sending the vocal channel through the pedals, or just about anything, and going back to Ableton. Of course, that's become a really big part of my sound.
Now, when you're using the outboard sequencer, do you still get some of the control over sidechain compression and if creating that kind of bouncing dance sound, or do you have to patiently wait until you're back in Ableton to finally hear it like that?
I have to patiently wait.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have the enough inputs right now, like to be able to do it in real time, but hopefully I'll get there. I'll get there soon.
Well, is a way to think about it like, because I feel like there's different elements to creating these EDM beats, and I've watched a lot of YouTube videos because, as I like to say on the podcast, I'm a closet DJ that wants to come out, and I just love it.
I think we all are.
It's like, this is the kind of music that makes my car stereo sound really good. It makes me happy, too. But it seems like there's different elements. There's all that sidechain stuff is like part of the making the mix sound final, but before you get there, you have to create some sort of a beat. You have to create some sort of a rhythm, and it's like maybe it's 4 on the floor kick. It probably is. I mean, it seems like almost every beat has 4 on the floor kick, because otherwise, I don't know. Do you sometimes create beats where the kick is hip hop music? Of course, is different. That's the kicks are moved around in different locations, and it's a different kind of rhythm. But are you primarily doing a 1, 2, 3, 4 beat with a kick drum that starts from there?
Yes, I think that's like a great starting point. And it's also like, it's been tested throughout history, like it just works.
Yeah.
Like it just works. So,
well, it just works for a dance floor. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, really. But if you think about it, like the 4 on the floor kick, you find it in all kinds of music. Like, it not exclusively dance music. Like you can really find it anywhere, and it's just like it's natural. I think it's like natural. But it's a great starting point. Like if you don't know where to start and you want to create music, like the first thing you can do is just a 4 on the floor kick and just go from there. It's going to take you somewhere. For sure, it's going to take you somewhere.
How would you describe cumbia?
How would I describe cumbia?
Yeah, how do you describe the beat?
Okay, cumbia has a really interesting element, and it's that it also includes the 4 on the floor kick. Like if you listen to modern cumbia, it's there. But from where I'm from, that is Barranquilla, Atlántico, we actually have, it's controversial and it's a debate that is never gonna end, but because today cumbia, there's Peruvian cumbia, Mexican cumbia, like it's universal. Cumbia is universal nowadays. But I feel like the cumbia from the state I'm from Atlántico, I think it has got to be one of the oldest and most ancestral like iterations of cumbia. And there's a really interesting element that is actually the upbeat. Mm-hmm. Like there's an instrument, kind of a maraca, that always marks the upbeat, and there's another one called the llamador. It's a drum, and it plays like on the upbeat all the time, and that kind of like drives the whole energy of cumbia.
Now, is cumbia I might be thinking about it wrong, but is it that dum, da-kum, da-kum, da-kum? Is it like that at all?
What you just sang is more like, it's called dembow.
Dembow.
And,
Cool.
and that is the driving beat behind reggaeton, for example.
Okay. And so how would you sing cumbia to us right now? Is that a fair question?
It's let me see. It's a pattern. It's not so easy to sing, but I'm gonna try to break down the elements a little bit. So let's say what I was saying about the upbeat. So let's say for 1, 2, 3, 4, the drum would play something like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is
okay.
And suddenly this upbeat becomes like the core of the beat, and also like another element is like taka 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 taka. That's like the essence of the cumbia, basically.
That's great.
But it's so universal now that in every place, like they make it with their own instruments. Some now it's fairly common to combine cumbia with electronic music. So now you're gonna hear cumbia with an electronic kick drum on the beat. So yeah, it's each time it gets harder to describe. But if you find it interesting, I can maybe add to our playlist like some example of what for me is like the core of cumbia, like from Colombia.
That'd be great. Just send it over and we'll add that. Rockstars, you can check that stuff out too.
Did you know that one of the most common fears with audio mastering is not knowing if your mix is ready or not? Look, nobody wants to send a mix in for mastering only to realize there's some resonating low end that's going on that wasn't picked up in the mix. That's where I come in. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. As soon as you send a mix for me to listen to, I'm already on your team. Mix feedback and master readiness is a service I offer for free and for good reason. That's because a great mix produces an even greater master. So if I can help you minimize oddities and issues and even provide some advice that will help your mix translate better, then mastering becomes more efficient and effective. And you don't stress about those issues at all. Just go to soundporter.com. There you can find videos, a FAQ, and a pre-mastering checklist on my website that will explain a lot of what you need to know. When you're ready for great feedback, just reach out via my low-friction contact form and send me a mix to hear. Again, you can find me at soundporter.com.
Are you sick of searching for the right cable only to realize it doesn't even exist? Or maybe you're asking yourself, how in the world do I hook my studio up? Well, say goodbye to those headaches because Trace Audio can get you wired up right. Based in Nashville, but serving studios nationwide and around the world, Trace Audio specializes in custom cables, labels, and wiring solutions. From labeling your patch bay to wiring your full studio or large format console, Trace Audio does it all, whether you're a home or pro studio owner. And the real game changer is Trace Audio's custom patch bay label designer. It's a one-stop tool to color code, organize, and design labels for your quarter-inch or XLR patch bays. No more wondering where things are on your patch bay, when instead you can have sleek, professional labels that are easy to read and easy to use. Try the free online patch bay label designer at traceaudio.com and use the code RSR15 to get 15% off your custom labels and take your studio to the next level. All right, so let's see. It's cool hearing you talk about your process. Let's back up and let's get geeky on mixing a little bit, because for a lot of the music you're doing, it's nothing until it's got the vocals on there sounding amazing, right? Would you agree that the singer is a very important part of the music that you're making? And when you're doing that, what are some of the things that you want to tell us about how to both record and mix the vocals so that they really sound great in the finished mix?
Okay, but first of all, if you're making music that's gonna have some kind of vocal element in it. I guess the brain is hardwired to like take the vocal and interpret it as the most important element. Like whenever a vocal pops up, even if it's like a vocal electronic vocal chop, you take the vocal and you mess with it, and you take the pitch up, cut it up, whatever, you make it sound as even as a synthesizer or even as a percussion instrument. Just the vocal quality draws your ear. Maybe as humans, we are just like hardwired to think this way. So I think it really helps the music and the mixing process and even the production process to always have this in mind. Like if your musical elements start fighting with your vocal and trying to take space away from it, like that's a problem that you're gonna have. Like that's something that's gonna make the audience's understanding of your message probably harder. It's gonna probably obscure like the message a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you have a vocal, treat it as something extremely important.
Now, is this the new way of thinking in when you're starting a song? Whereas you talked about starting with a beat and building a song from that, are you beginning to find yourself wanting to start with the vocal and build the beat to the vocal?
Not with the vocal, but probably with the rest of the instrumentation, but no beat. Let's say a bed of guitars or some harmony or some chords. The thing is, I used to start always with the beat. And like I said before, it's okay, I want to do an Afrobeats, or I want to do whatever, like a house music or some other kind of electronic genre or whatever, or a cumbia or anything, champeta or any kind of music. So let's say I get myself into the mood of making the beat, I finish the beat with all these cool layers, like the beat is sounding amazing. And then when it came time to put the music on top of the beat, maybe the idea that it may sound funny, but I feel it this way, like my musical soul or my musical emotion or the spirit I'm in that day, that is like really the composer side of me. Maybe it's just not in the mood to do an Afrobeats or to do whatever beat I did that day. And I discovered over time that I was sometimes trying to force myself to make some type of music that went well with the beat that I decided to do that day, almost randomly.
It's funny that you say that, because we talked about XLN Life earlier.
Yeah.
And it was one of the things that I thought would really take a tool like that to another level, which is you capture a sound out in the real world and there's a mood and a feeling that goes with that. And when you come back into the studio, you don't automatically want to go back to the same electronic beat as the place to start, So it's fun to hear you talk about that, because I agree. Sometimes the studio also feels like a clinical place,
Yes,
and when you go out into the real world. So Rockstars, I gotta add this about Jose too. We actually rescheduled our podcast. It was originally scheduled for some other date, and then he had to reschedule it for this one when we're doing the recording. But he's the only guest I've ever had that said, the reason is because I'm going out deep into the jungle and I'm not going to have the right kind of internet connection. So it's a great story, but it just reminds me of the importance of leaving the studio for inspiration, for creative input, and going to places that make you feel a lot alive,
Yeah, actually, I was literally in the jungle. This is one of the special places in the world, and it's in the northern part of Colombia, really close to my city, and it's called the Tayrona Park, El Parque Tayrona. So it's this place where you have a jungle, and then it's right by the ocean. Like you have the sea right in front of the jungle, and to the other side you have like snowy mountains, a snowy mountain range.
Wow.
So that doesn't happen very often in the world. And there's also something really special about this place, and is that we have an active community of like Native Americans from Colombia, like Indios, like they're called the Arhuacos, and they have their own culture, their own magic, and the whole area just feels magic because of all these elements.
And
So,
do you find yourself feeling inspired musically and creatively when you go visit places like that?
yeah, definitely, definitely. Like just reconnecting yourself to nature on these days is really important. And I was there because the singer of Bomba Estereo lives there. We had a couple of sessions over there, and so it was not only it was. I mean, it was kind of a working situation that doesn't feel like work at all, because
Yeah.
like you play for a while, and then if you get tired, like you just have the ocean right in front of you. You can go take the sun or get into the ocean or whatever. But
Right.
the truth is that the internet is not the best internet scenario. So thank God we could reschedule.
Yeah, no worries. Well, so coming back to this idea of making sure that you start with the music and the vocal and then compose the beat around that. Keep talking about that idea, and then also talk about some of the stuff you mentioned, having a vocal and then, maybe wanting to chop it up and do interesting things to it. So then a question that I think of is, do you mix the vocal first and then start chopping it up and doing these other things? Or do you just start with the vocal track before you've done fancy mixing tricks to it
Oh, okay,
and
okay.
create, talk about all those things. Cause those are the things we
Okay.
run into when we're like, I want to try this. And you're like, I don't know, which one should I do first?
Yeah. So what I was saying is that now I don't start from the beat. I start from the music, and the same, like the music comes with the music directs you like where it wants to go. So maybe now adapting a beat to where the music wants to go. In my personal experience now, I make much more music because the process is not forced, and I still have a lot of flexibility. Like for example, let's say I wake up today and I start jamming with some synths, some of the synths I have here, or with my guitars, and making like some loops, some interesting loops. I still have all the flexibility I need if I want to take the tempo down or the tempo up or change the pitch or whatever. And I love Ableton because it's really easy to do all those types of changes. And then let's say I feel okay, this harmony has a cool vibe that might work with a cumbia. I just make a cumbia beat on top of what I have, and I can keep playing. Like, okay, let's bring the tempo down, let's bring the tempo up, and I just feel like it flows like a whole lot more for me.
Yeah.
And then if I feel like, okay, this instrumental has something, I think maybe there's a song on it. Now I can start working on vocal melodies. If I'm working in my project, for example, I'll show the beat to Andrea, which is the singer, and she's also my wife, and she'll just start jamming, coming up with melodies, and then we might do like a first vocal take once we have like some idea of melody and some idea of lyric. We will have a first vocal take, which I try to capture the best that I can, because sometimes the magic of the first take, you can never get back to it.
Yeah.
Even if it's not perfect, there's always some special quality to that first take that I feel I can't recommend enough like to try to capture it, even if it's not finished, even if it's not done.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, in today's world, I think the lines are getting each time more blurred, and it's hard to say when your production is more mixing, or or when mixing is more mastering. I think like those lines are getting blurred each time, and the world moves so quickly, and sometimes opportunities, you have to take them like you never know when an opportunity is gonna come. So I always try to have things sounding as mixed as I can make them sound. I don't consider myself a mixer. I want to learn how to mix, but you learn tricks along the way, and I try to constantly apply them and to constantly learn more. And I try to get the vocal sounding like as finished as possible, even if it's just a demo stage. And right now, I wouldn't say it's easy, but I would say there's a lot of tools that make the job easier. Like, for example, there is a plugin I love called Mixbox by IK Multimedia. And it's just like this multi-plugin effect that really, really works for me, because it's set up like as if it were guitar pedals, but they're not necessarily guitar pedals. Like, you have compressors, all sorts, equalizers, like all sorts of tools, and it has great presets. So you can just open up a preset, adjust the dry wet mix of the preset, and you have a really cool sounding vocal, like with just one.
Yeah,
one
wow.
click.
I'm looking at the plugin now, and it just looks like a giant rack full of 500 modules. It's like,
That's
holy
right,
smokes, that's
500.
a lot of stuff.
Exactly, that's it. So it's really
That's cool.
it's really inspiring. It's really creative. And if you have a demo, let's say it's a demo vocal, maybe you don't even have lyrics yet, but you make it sound cool with this plugin, you can really start like chopping it up and just getting creative with it and make it an instrument out of the vocal. And it's not a final vocal. It's just like the first take. It might have been the first take, no lyrics, no nothing. And something cool can come out of it.
Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak or distant or lack punch or clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio using free and stock plugins and Pro Tools. And the best part is that these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you're using. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can use the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. For 15 years, I owned a famous MCI console that came from Criteria Studio C in Miami, where it made many Grammy-winning records in the 1970s, and it sounded amazing. When I was ready to upgrade my studio to full digital mixing, I decided to team up with Rick Carson at Make Believe Studio, Metric Halo, and Golden Ear producer Bill Simzik to recreate the legendary MCI console as the new MBSI plugin. This isn't just another boring plugin. The MBSI captures that same iconic sound that was used on multi-million selling records like Hotel California for the Eagles, produced by Bill Simzik, Saturday Night Fever and Stayin' Alive for the Bee Gees, I Shot the Sheriff for Eric Clapton, We're an American Band for Grand Funk Railroad, and the soundtrack to Grease, and was loved by legendary producers like Tom Dowd, Todd Rundgren, and Bill Simzik. to name just a few. The MBSI plugin not only delivers the authentic sound of the original MCI console faithfully, but it also adds new features like a top-notch compressor, overdrive, and a high and low pass filter switch. Features I always wished that the console had. Now you too can get that Grammy-winning MCI sound in your home studio, just like me. Whether you're recording or mixing, you can experience the sound of Miami 1976 with the MBSI plugin and soak up a little sunshine in your sound. Go to makebelievestudio.com/MBSI. Let's talk about what does it mean to chop it up. So now you've got a vocal track, you've got this effect on it, it's putting out a good sound. Would you commit that to audio and then what is it? How do you chop something up? Maybe talk about the step by step a little bit for the rock.
Okay, step by step. Let me try. So I have a vocal. Let's say I bounce it to audio with with effects printed on it.
Yeah.
Because let's say you print it with a reverb and a little delay. In a later stage, when you're moving the pitch up, moving the pitch down, you might stumble upon like a happy accident, like a glitch that you weren't expecting and that you might consider a mistake, but it sounds cool.
Yeah.
That's like golden. That's like golden stuff for vocal chops.
That's great.
For me,
and so
anyway.
you're manually chopping these things up. It's literally like going in and doing it, or do you like to throw it into a sampler and play back samples or something like that?
Well, there's two ways I do it. One is you can load the vocal on a sampler, and like Ableton has a sampler called Simpler that one of the options it does the chopping automatically for you. Like it detects the transients on the vocal, and it assigns like each transient to a specific note on the keyboard, and you can adjust the sensitivity so you can make the chops longer, and you can just play around, and you're gonna find something cool that works.
Yeah.
But I also like doing it the long way, the slightly harder way, because you can get like really unexpected results that I love. I love when I find these things. And for example, let's say you have your vocal audio. One thing I would try is, if you're working on Ableton Live, is immediately, let's say, pitching the vocal up. Let's say 12 semitones, like
right.
a whole octave up, or even 2 octaves up or down. And now you're gonna have when you warp your audio on Ableton Live, you have like different kinds of technologies that will try to make the audio sound unchanged as possible. Mm-hmm. And some of the algorithms actually mess up your audio completely. I love that. I love when the audio gets messed up. And now, after pitching, experimenting with different algorithms, I then maybe bounce back again to audio with all these glitches printed, all the effects, all the sound messed up. And then I load the sampler that we talked about earlier, that makes the job automatic. And now I have like a whole totally different sounding vocal, and the result might be interesting and something you wouldn't have imagined in the first place.
That's great. It's cool to hear that description of the process. And while you were talking about it, I'm thinking about like, why do we love things when they don't look or sound right? You know, I think about when I was in architecture school and we had Xerox machines, and you'd go take a drawing and you'd Xerox it, and it'd look a little different. It'd look kind of cool. And then if you Xerox it 10 more times and zoom it up, you know, then it gets really weirded out and it makes it cool. And so then the question is, why do we like that stuff? I think my first thought is that it reminds us of a dream, in the same way that when we're dreaming, We kind of remember it and we kind of understand it, but it doesn't quite make sense, and it's fascinating to us.
Okay, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think also you could say it reminds us of our humanity. Like our humanity lies in our mistakes, and our mistakes also is what makes us who we are. Like when we hear something perfect, it's not as easy to make a connection with perfection because deep down we know perfection doesn't exist. And also I've been discovering more and more that what adds vibe to a recording or to music is probably the imperfection, the thing that maybe shouldn't work but works. Yeah, there's definitely something really appealing about that.
That's great. I love it. Well, Jose, it's been really super fun having you here on the podcast. I think I'm going to move forward to one of our closing questions. This one I like to ask all of our guests, and it's hypothetical, and you get to go back in time and we take the Wayback Studio machine, and you go back in time and you find young Jose who's thinking about like, nobody else in my family it is a musician, but I think that's what I want to do, but I don't really know what that is. You know, you go back and find time to wherever you want, and you say, listen, Jose, here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice do you want to go back and give yourself if you could?
Okay, I think the perhaps the most important thing I would recommend myself to focus on is like, firstly, really thinking and really worrying myself about what is my voice, like what is the thing that I can bring to the world that nobody else can, because each person has his own voice, his own concerns, his own thoughts, his own experience. And in the end, the music that we make is a reflection of who we are. So I think the more we know who we are, the more our music is unique.
How do you find out who you are?
I think the first step, it may sound silly, but the first step is asking yourself, who am I? And it sounds silly, but not everybody does it. You know, not everybody asks themselves that question. It also helps listening to podcasts such as this one, or to listen to interviews with people you admire, and trying to get like the wisdom that they're sharing, that they share from their experience, but something of what they share will probably resonate with you and will help you on the quest of finding out who you are, which is also you will never know. Like there's never a final answer, and probably the answer transforms itself with time. But just asking yourself, who I am, what do I like, what do I don't like, where don't I find myself, that definitely contributes. And like, to finish the advice, I would also tell myself not to fall into the trap of like unhealthy comparisons with other people, because everybody is in their own path, and maybe you see somebody else and you can see, oh, this person has these huge numbers and he's doing this and this and this and this, and then you try to do that like you try to bring that into your own path, and suddenly you might lose the way, and what works for someone else doesn't necessarily work for you. So I think it's definitely like a personal quest, and just like go deep, take the deep dive into your personal quest, and enjoy the ride.
I love it, man. That's great. Well, Jose, this is a blast, man. It's really great to meet you, and thanks for joining us here on the podcast. Let the rock stars know, how can they find you if they want to learn more about you? Maybe they want to connect. Maybe they are ready to make an amazing hit song and they just need to reach out to you.
No, great. No, Lich, thank you so much for the invitation. I hope we can do it someday live in Nashville in the studio.
Yeah.
I hope I can come visit someday. But definitely, I have my own personal Instagram profile. It's josecast.i. That's my Instagram profile. I also have the Instagram profile of my band called At Paraísos Music. And I also have a TikTok for my band. It's called the same, At Paraísos Music. And on TikTok, I'm becoming more and more active, actually sharing a lot of what I've shared here, like a lot of my process. There's a lot of tutorials, a lot of jamming, a lot of sharing inspiration that I find everywhere. So I also recommend some books on creativity that I love. If I find a cool video, I share a lot of stuff in TikTok. So that might be a cool place to be in touch.
Awesome. Well, and then Rockstars, a reminder, we've got links to all this stuff and to the discography right in the show notes. So make sure you scroll down, click on that button, and go listen to some of these killer sounding records. You know, you're going to start dancing. There's a good chance you'll start dancing around. Jose, great to hang with you. Rockstars, thanks for listening. And Jose, I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, the same. It will happen.
All right, man. Thanks so much for joining us, dude. Cheers.
Thank you, man. All the best.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this show possible. iZotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, Empirical Labs, Sound Porter Mastering, and Trace Audio. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon codes. At iZotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plug-in purchase. At empiricallabs.com, use the code RSR10 for 10% off the Arouser and Big Freak plugins. And finally, use the code RSR15 to get 15% off your custom patch bay labels at traceaudio.com. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio, and they're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.